This is the Lockpicking Lawyer, and what I have for you today is an Apecs Model XD Euro Profile cylinder. This lock was sent to me a good long time ago by YouTube user UrbanHawk, and I have to admit I've been avoiding it. And the reason for that is that this lock makes me a little bit nervous. Let me show you why that is. You can see that this is a dimple lock, and if you look at the top here, you would probably deduce that it is a 7-pin dimple lock. But that's not the case. Let's take a little bit of a closer look, and you can see we have a much smaller core than you might expect in a Euro profile cylinder, and it is offset upwards, such that this portion is really thin and this portion is really thick. The reason that's thick is to make room for Apecs to install a whole nother set of pins that are vertically and directly opposed to the main pins. So this is not a 7-pin dimple lock, this is actually a 13-pin dimple lock. We have our 7 main pins here, and then we have 6 pins on the bottom. The number 3 spot is blank, so we don't have 7 pins on the bottom. And the reason I think number 3 is blank is so that you can't remove the key in the 180-degree position. If there were 7 directly opposed pins, top and bottom, you could remove it in either location. So I decided to take this lock on today, and the first thing I usually attempt when looking at high pin count locks is I attempt to rake it. And I started with this Clom dimple rake, and I was shocked when I was able to rake it open the very first time I tried. Now, I have not been able to repeat that process since. However, what I can do very reliably is rake this to a false set. So that's what we're going to do. Hook on those bottom pins and go up to the top ones, and there we go. Nice deep false set. And that means a couple of things to us. First, it means that we're stuck in some security pins, obviously. But what it also means is that we have set all of the bottom pins. We know that because there are no security pins in the bottom, and frankly, there's not enough room for any security pins. So what we have is probably a couple of spools holding us up from the top. So we're just going to use a normal dimple pick to hopefully set those pins. Number 1, 2, 3. Okay, number 4, getting some counter rotation. Got him set and lost our false set. Moving on to 5. Okay, 6 is binding. Got our false set back. Then counter rotation on number 7. And we got the lock open. The lock that was making me nervous for so long, well, turns out it was a bit of a pushover. Okay, let's take this guy apart and I'll show you what's inside. Okay, I've already obviously partially disassembled this, frankly, because I had no clue how I was going to open this up for you. What I ended up doing was driving out the 2 pins that held this core to the reinforced spline. Then I discovered what happened was a couple of the pins from the back of the lock popped up, so that created a bit of a problem. So I ended up pushing a dowel pin in there, taping it in place, taking the whole lock apart, reassembling it, and now we're going to take it apart again. And let me tell you, this is not an easy lock to take apart. First of all, we have a bendy spring clip here, but it is not very bendy at all. It's actually a real pain in the butt to get off. There we go. I think we got enough. Nope, not quite. Okay. Now, I'd mentioned before that we have an odd size core in here, and none of my followers worked for this, and you really need a follower that fits the lock very, very tightly. Otherwise, the gutting's going to be a complete mess. So what I did was I got my set of center locators. What they are straight rods of steel, round rods of steel, with little points on the end, and they come in sets. Usually they come in steps of every, let's say, 2/1000ths of an inch, and they're for finding the center of any sized hole. So I can usually use one of these as a follower whenever I need something odd sized. So, okay, let's get that, and hopefully we'll be able to slide this out without too much trouble. Okay, first thing we're going to have to do is dump all of our pins. And don't forget, we have a set of pins on the bottom and on the top. So let's get the bottom pins out first. There's number 1, 2. There's none in 3, so let's skip that. 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I lost number 1. I'm going to put that up top. Okay, so we're going to do, let me do the main pins on the bottom, and then those crazy little bottom of the keyway pins up top here. Okay, let's dump the rest of these key pins out. 2, 3. Looks like we have a combination of brass and steel pins here. Okay, I think we got everything out of that core. Okay, now for the fun part. We're going to take all of our pins out, and let's see, how are we going to do this? I think the best way to do it is to block all of the bottom pins, take the top pins out, and then we'll turn around and we'll do all the bottom pins. Okay, we've got a little bit of a strange arrangement on pin number 1. We actually have 2 steel anti-drill pins and a special short spring. I assume they did that so the drill protection extends up pretty high into the Bible. We have a spool in 2, spool in 3, spool in 4, another anti-drill pin in 5, and I'm going to approach the rest of these from the back more than anything so I don't lose that shim that's holding all of the bottom pins up. Okay, and then another 2 spools there. Okay, let's yank that shim out, and let's get all of our crazy little pins out. These are a little bit on the strange side. Come on, get out of there, spring. We have a tiny little spring and a little cap-shaped driver pin. Okay. Should have removed the springs. Okay, no little driver pin in slot 3. There's number 4. Five. Okay, let's get the other ones from the other side. Okay, here's the top spring, the bottom driver spring, top spring, Okay, and I should have one more little spring. Okay, wow, what a fun disassembly. Okay, let's get all these springs out of the way. Put the key down, and I will give you a close-up of what was inside of this Apecs Model XD. Okay, let's look at the main pins first. You can see that we have all standard key pins. You can see there is a stepped design to them, and the reason they do that is so those steps fall on that little bit of counter milling in the core. And the only reason for that is to make sure those key pins don't fall into the keyway too far. Okay, moving back to our pins, you can see all standard key pins. Then for driver pins, we have 2 stacked on top of each other standard anti-drill pins in slot 1. Then we have 5 spools in slots 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. And then another anti-drill pin in slot 5. Then moving to these crazy little pins that they squeezed in the bottom. Again, all standard key pins and standard driver pins that are cap shaped such that these tiny little springs will fit inside of that cap. So you can have a driver pin and a spring all in the same location. Then moving over to this core, you can see we have that counter milling on the top and on the bottom, and you can see the number 3 slot on the bottom is solid. Again, I believe that's so you can't remove the key in the 180-degree position. And you can see we have some more drill protection in the form of 2 rods above and below the keyway. So a really impressive looking lock. Frankly, I'm a little bit surprised that it's so well made. It appears to be very well machined. This is made in China mainly for the Russian market, so it's not one that we're going to see in the United States, particularly in Euro profile cylinder form. But frankly, it's pretty impressive, even though we did get into it pretty quickly. I'm not sure how they could make it much better. Certainly those bottom pins are never going to be too much of a problem raking them, and it seems like they put a lot of security pins in there, 5 of them in the bottom. So all in all, they seem to have done all the right things, but we did get into it pretty easily. So that's all I have for you on this Apecs Model XD Euro profile cylinder. Urban Hawk, thank you very much for sending it my way. To everyone else, if you do have any questions or comments about it, please put them below. If you like this video and would like to see more like it, please subscribe. And as always, have a nice day. Thank you.